Today, we'll be discussing the role of agribusiness in our return to economic prosperity. As we all know, the sector is no stranger to major challenges, but on the flip side, it offers some major growth opportunities that have the potential to contribute significantly to our economic recovery. Today, we'll be exploring what those opportunities are, how they might be realised, and how the pandemic has changed the sector. Like many others through the height of the pandemic, CEDA's program of discussion forums moved to an online platform. As we slowly return to business as usual, CEDA will return to face-to-face events, but plans to continue a robust program of live stream discussions to allow people from all corners of the country to participate and to inform and promote debate of critical issues. To keep abreast of the range of events run by CEDA, we encourage you to visit CEDA's website, where you can also register for upcoming events and watch the recordings of past live streams. If, like me, you're a lover of a good podcast, CEDA also produces regular podcasts as well as video interviews and blogs with leading experts and policymakers talking about key issues impacting the economy more broadly and in key sectors such as health and resources. These are also available through the CEDA website. Today, like at CEDA face-to-face events, you'll still be able to interact with our speakers through our Q&A portal, which is available via the link below the video on your screen, or you can access the portal by entering in your browser ceda.pigeonhole.at and then using the passcode AGRI, A-G-R-I, all in uppercase. You can also join the conversation on Twitter by using today's hashtag, which is hashtag Agribusiness, and tagging CEDA at CEDA_news. CEDA acknowledges that today and every day we're on Aboriginal land, committed to recognition and reconciliation. We respect elders and we support their stated aspirations. On behalf of CEDA, I'd like to thank and acknowledge CSIRO for their sponsorship of today's event. Now, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our speakers who will be leading today's discussion. Dr. Katherine Wynn, Lead Economist, CSIRO Futures, and Tony Mahar, Chief Executive Officer, National Farmers Federation. I'll now hand over to our first speaker. Please welcome Dr. Katherine Wynn.
Thanks, Franki, and hello, everyone. Over the next 10 minutes, I'll take you through some of the work that CSIRO has been doing, identifying opportunities for growth and recovery. The food and agribusiness sector is a vital contributor to the Australian economy, a driver of prosperity for many regional and rural communities. And at CSIRO, we see a strong role for food and agribusiness in Australia's economic recovery. And on the next slide, back in 2017, we published the CSIRO Food and Agribusiness Roadmap, which identified several growth opportunities for the sector. And last year, we reviewed and quantified those growth opportunities in the Growth Opportunities for Australian Food and Agribusiness report. Last week, we released CSIRO's COVID-19 Recovery and Resilience report. This latest report is CSIRO's first public report on its response to COVID-19, and it showcases science and technology-based opportunities to drive Australia's economic recovery, including for the food and agribusiness sector. For the COVID-19 report, we consolidated more than a dozen reports we've done over the past few years, including the two previous food and agribusiness reports. We also conducted additional research and consultations with over 20 senior business, government and research leaders. We examined the trends and national advantages that are most relevant now and considered how COVID-19 has created, changed or intensified opportunities for growth. And while much has changed since last year, the potential for innovation-led growth remains as strong, if not stronger. By acting now and harnessing the opportunities identified in this latest report, we think the food and agribusiness sector can realise significant economic value over the next few years, as well as longer-term prosperity for all Australians. The opportunities we identified focus on two timeframes. Medium-term recovery opportunities are those that involve deployment-ready technologies that could create jobs and growth over the next 24 months. And then longer-term resilience opportunities are those that are mostly still in development, and require further investment, testing and scale up before their economic potential is realisable. And when we started examining the trends through the COVID-19 lens, we found that several trends that existed before COVID-19 are now more relevant than ever. So on the next slide, Perhaps one of the most immediate and obvious trends to be accelerated by the pandemic is the intensified focus on health, wellbeing and biosecurity. COVID-19 is driving increasing consumer focus on health and wellbeing products. COVID-19 has highlighted more than ever before the globally transmissible nature of diseases and their severe and unpredictable impact on society. While Australia has a low prevalence of foodborne illness, high safety standards and a strong biosecurity system, these globally enviable attributes are not assured forever and need continued investment and support. The pandemic has also heightened sustainability expectations. COVID-19 has reminded us how the supply of limited resources is constrained by severe and unpredictable events, such as the recent bushfires, drought, and economic disruption. Under these uncertain conditions, businesses are seeking ways to improve the efficiency and circularity of their production activities, while consumers are seeking products that are ethically and sustainably sourced. The pandemic has drawn intense scrutiny on supply chain security and reliability and on our dependence on global supply chains. While Australia is one of the most food secure countries on the planet, we're heavily reliant on global supply chains for many of our other essential items, such as intermediate goods and fuel, as well as other important inputs like migrant labour. COVID-19 has also highlighted the need for systems that manage supply chain risk, particularly around visibility and traceability, and demonstrating safety and authenticating links right across the supply chain. Closely related to supply chain security is the demand for agile and bespoke manufacturing solutions, including in the food and beverage sector. The ability to adapt and pivot local manufacturing production to react to changing supply needs will become more important and prompt a renewed look at how to integrate more advanced design and new technologies into the production line. Finally, in response to COVID-19, Australia has shown great agility in adopting digital technologies, setting an encouraging precedent for utilising digital systems and solutions in the future. We also have a range of national advantages that stand us in good stead for responding to these trends. Australia is recognised for our diverse and highly educated workforce and for our world-class research community. We have a sound regulatory environment with strong reputation for high standards, safety, and high quality trusted export products. We are also well known for our exceptional natural resources and unique geography, including a range of counter-seasonal growing zones and proximity to major trading economies. How well we respond to these trends and leverage these national advantages today will determine our path to recovery and resilience. While the CSIRO COVID-19 Recovery and Resilience Report showcases opportunities across 6 sectors, I'll focus today on the opportunities for the food and agribusiness sector. So on the next slide, we see huge potential for the sector to contribute to Australia's economic recovery and realise economic value over the next 2 years, including in alternative protein sources, high-value food products and smarter value chains. The first opportunity is for Australia to meet the world's growing demand for high-quality protein. Global population growth, including a growing urban middle class in the Asia-Pacific region, is driving this opportunity. And as a major producer and exporter of protein, we are well placed to meet this demand. In particular, Australia's food industry is well placed to develop alternative protein products that meet the requirements of large vegetarian populations in major export markets such as India, as well as the preferences of the modern health, environmental and welfare conscious consumer. The Growth Opportunities Report estimated a $4 billion domestic and $2.5 billion export opportunity for the alternative proteins market by 2030. One area we see significant opportunity and where CSIRO is making investments through our missions program is plant-based proteins. We think this opportunity could support a shift from commodity grain legume crops to high-value protein products and lead to increased farm gate prices for these high-demand food ingredients. The image you see here is of V2 Foods' sustainable Australian plant-based burgers. Similarly, we think the sector can offer premium, high-value health and wellbeing products to the global market. Wealthier consumers are driving higher demand for free-from and natural products, such as allergen-free products and certified organic products. Increasingly health-conscious and time-poor consumers are also seeking fortified and functional foods and beverages enriched with vitamins and minerals. The Growth Opportunities Report estimates an $8 billion domestic opportunity and an almost $6 billion export opportunity for these products by 2030. Thirdly, we also think there's an opportunity for smarter value chains using new technology-enabled processes and systems such as data analytics and digital infrastructure to more effectively link together the food and agribusiness value chain from producers through to manufacturers, retailers and consumers. Through smarter value chains, the sector can improve productivity and reduce costs by optimising their operations, streamlining their logistics, and developing greater scale, agility, and efficiency. Beyond the next 2 years, we envisage a thriving food and agribusiness sector that provides premium and trusted health and wellbeing products to the global marketplace using efficient and sustainable solutions. We see opportunities to further develop and roll out traceability and provenance technologies. Improved food system traceability will help meet consumer demand for transparency in food production. It'll also enhance our ability to optimise supply chains, validate sourcing claims, manage food safety issues, and minimise food loss. One particular area we see significant opportunity and where CSIRO is investing through our admissions program is market access. We will develop and test new approaches to meeting the regulatory requirements of Australia's trading partners and give Australia access to as many export markets as possible. The second longer-term opportunity is around sustainable production chains. Given the risks from climate change, resource scarcity, broader supply chain pressures, and climatic events such as droughts, we think the sector can continue to develop innovative approaches for effective and sustainable resource use, while ensuring the resilience of our natural capital. We see huge scope for new science and technology, such as new water management systems and climate-tolerant cultivars that future-proof the sector and protect the resilience of our water, our soil, and our biodiversity. And to the next slide, to fully realise the potential for science and technology and unlock these opportunities for recovery and growth and resilience, we also need to strengthen the foundations for growth. These range from making targeted investments and increasing technology adoption to including social and environmental considerations in all of our decision-making processes. Now, I've only had time to touch on the key findings of our reports. So if you're interested, I encourage you to go to our website where you'll find our reports, including a new digital version of the Growth Opportunities Report that allows you to explore the data and make comparisons across each of the opportunities. Thank you, and I'll pass you back to Franki.
Thanks, Katherine. It was a great way to open up and frame the discussion, and I look forward to discussing it further with you after our next speaker. So on that, please welcome Tony Mahar. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks, Franki. Good afternoon, everyone. Can I say thanks to CEDA and also CSIRO for having me at this forum this afternoon. We at the NFF and the agriculture industry think that the future of Australia is regionalisation, and of course a key part of that is agriculture. This is not only the agriculture sector's aspiration, we believe that it has to be the way forward. The National Farmers Federation has, in the last 12 to 24 months, proudly set a target to grow the industry, the agriculture industry's farm gate value, by an extra $40 billion in the next decade. And most of you will appreciate that is going to be a really tough ask, tough challenge, particularly not only off the back of course, COVID, but droughts and floods and fires that we've seen in the last 12 months or so. But we are supremely confident that with the right environment, Australian agriculture can shine and we can lead the way, but it will be off the back of a comprehensive regionalisation approach. We are of the view that regionalisation will be good for our regional communities and for the majority of Australians who will continue to live in our urban centres. The COVID-19 crisis has presented a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reshape Australia for the better. Australian agriculture is positioned so well to be one of the leaders in driving that economic recovery, and it's a task that we relish. This regionalisation agenda won't come off the back of shifting government departments into regional areas or vague concepts of a Silicon Valley sprouting up in the back of Burke. It will come from investing in our existing regional industries, such as agriculture, clearly, but also the associated supply chain industries like tourism, like hospitality, like health services, and associated industries like mining. It will come from moving these sectors up the value chain, and it is about moving complementary industries such as food and fibre manufacturing outside of the big cities and closer to the point of production. So I'd like to outline briefly what we mean by regionalisation and how it will be best for the agriculture sector and what the government can do to help facilitate this regionalisation agenda. For us, it very much is a partnership. And we think the regionalisation agenda aims to establish a network of hard and soft infrastructure across all of Australia that provides the physical, social access to economic opportunities, a skilled workforce and social amenities needed to maintain a vibrant regional economy and communities. Comprehensive adoption of a sustainable, and when I say that, I mean not one parliamentary term, a sustainable regionalisation agenda will benefit the Australian economy and urban communities. It'll provide the foundation for a diverse Australian economy that is resilient to shocks that we've seen in the last 9 months and disruptions to our economic centres, including pandemics, the physical and cyber attacks that will help reduce the crippling overpopulation and congestion facing our big cities. So absolutely it will be good for agriculture, but it won't be just good for agriculture in the regions. It will deliver a whole range of social and environmental benefits to the broader economy. Australia is uniquely vulnerable to the shocks that will impact large population centres. Katherine outlined the fragility of our supply chain in terms of our food security being quite solid, but the incoming supply chain requirements, we have seen in the last 9 months some pressure put on those supply chains. Australia stands alone in having its population concentrated in cities exceeding 1 million people, with 64% of Australians living in big cities. By contrast, 30% of Canadians and New Zealanders live in big cities with 20% in the USA. So why now? Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed many people's views on the merits of big cities, changed the business community's mindset around the geographical location of their operations and staff. We've demonstrated clearly that we can work remotely and regionally, and demonstrated to governments the risk of association with concentrating all of Australia's economic capacity in 2 major cities, capital cities. This shift in thinking creates enormous opportunities for the regionalisation of the economy and for agriculture to be front and centre of that recovery effort. Agriculture is one of the few industries that has continued to grow during this pandemic, and agriculture is ready to grasp new opportunities with 2 hands and accelerate the return to economic prosperity. And I should be clear that agriculture has been impacted by the pandemic, absolutely, but nowhere near to the extent of tourism, hospitality and retail. We are coming off the back of across some parts of the country, a 5-year drought, one of the worst droughts this country's ever seen. But right now, in the last 6 months or so, it is one of the best seasons that agriculture has seen, and we are absolutely primed to drive recovery in terms of market access. Again, Katherine talked about that, but also to inject much needed capital into these rural and regional economies. Agriculture does underpin the economies of most of Australia's regional centres. As I said before, it's a $60 billion industry that is fundamentally reliant on regional and rural Australia, and we do have a target to grow the industry towards that $100 billion. The opportunity that agriculture provides to go beyond the farm gate are significant. These opportunities include co-locating of food processing and manufacturing close to the point of food production, not near the markets and economic infrastructure of capital cities. It also goes for fibre, so not only cotton, but forest products as well that are increasingly important in terms of packaging. There are opportunities to develop synergies with other complementary industries, including provenance-based food and wine tourism and the highly lucrative nutraceuticals market, food produced and marketed for its health and medicinal benefits. So how do we make this happen? The will is there. The people and the businesses are actively exploring the merits of rural and regional Australia. We need to provide them with a way. Fortunately, we here at the NFF are a friendly bunch and we're here to help. So in July of this year, we launched our Get Australia Growing Economic Recovery Plan. At the heart of this plan is the regionalisation agenda. We believe that a reimagined and appropriately resourced regional program can be the engine room of recovery and can drive rural and regional economies to a new level. At a really high level, the program would provide a short list of regions with positive economic development potential, very similar to the priority list for infrastructure developments put forward by Infrastructure Australia. This exercise would be about picking winners. We no longer have the fiscal luxury not to pick winners. It would centre initiatives on existing and new transformative infrastructure investments such as inland rail, renewable energy zones and the proposed Hells Gate Dam in Queensland. It would develop genuine partnerships between local, state and federal governments to develop a consistent economic development plan, remove duplication and align planning and environmental regulations to make sure these are reality. With respect to infrastructure, we're seeking a $4 billion transformative regional infrastructure program, which is in line with Australia's infrastructure investment backlog to 2040. This commitment would galvanise local communities, private sector and industry investment in regional deals or regional initiatives, much like the Western Sydney Airport has done for the Western Sydney region. We're also seeking a discount rates for cost-benefit analysis to be revised down, noting that the historically low cost of long-term government debt. This will give a true indication of the viability of regional infrastructure investment. We simply can't continue to accept the rejection of regional infrastructure proposals based on flawed analysis. We will be seeking microeconomic reforms, including competition reform, that will help contribute to this economic development, and that won't cost government a cent. But we don't have time to cover those issues today. So in conclusion, we are launching a discussion paper on regionalisation in November. We have put forward our Get Australia Growing proposal to government and to the COVID Commission, to various stakeholders. And I'd implore all of you to have a read of it and join the regionalisation bandwagon. And thanks for having me today.
Thanks, Tony. It was an excellent presentation and once again provides a great framework for panel discussion, which we're about to launch into. Now we have 30 minutes for our panel discussion, and can I just remind viewers that you can put forward your own questions for the panel at any time using the Q&A portal through Pigeonhole, and we'll endeavour to answer as many as possible during the allotted time. Perhaps I can kick off with a question of my own, and I might just focus on what Tony's just talked about, and which is Get Australia Growing again, and the focus on regionalisation and that regionalisation agenda. Tony, you mentioned that one of the things that the NFF will be looking for is for governments at all levels to commit to funding regional infrastructure, and that's certainly been an area that's been lacking in the past. And as you mentioned, now there is certainly the will to get certain things done. What role do you see for private sector investment in helping sort of get regional infrastructure up to a point that it needs to be for business to be able to capitalise on these opportunities?
Yeah, thanks, Franki. In short, it's a large role for the commercial or the private sector. We're always of the view that this needs to be a public-private partnership, but there has to be that comprehensive commitment from all levels of government, as you say. I think the industry will, the private will is there, but right now what we don't have is that coordination across federal, state and local governments to actually make it happen. There are some examples around the country of where this is happening well, and one of those is in New South Wales, where we've got a special activation precincts initiative, which has identified 4 areas across the state that have been earmarked earmarked for development. And really simply, and it's much more complicated than what I'm about to say, but essentially there is a commitment to look at the regulatory approach and make investment and cooperation between governments and industry easier. So those 4 areas, they're Moree, Parks, Wagga and the Snowy Mountains, can take advantage of the opportunities. And of course, agriculture is central to 3 or 4 of those areas. But that's the type of thing we're looking for, a comprehensive long-term commitment from government, and industry will invest and commit if that environment's there.
Yeah. And part of that obviously is, as you mentioned, ensuring that the right policy settings are there to encourage that business investment.
Definitely, yeah. It has to be that regulatory framework and the investment certainty that will allow for and enable private sector investment in these regional centres, and of course, we hope in agriculture.
Katherine, if I may ask you a question, key to realising some of the opportunities or many of the opportunities that you've identified is investment in science and technology, with businesses struggling and historically levels of private sector investment in R&D in Australia lagging other countries. How can we encourage more private sector investment in R&D in Australia?
Yeah, thanks, Franki. I agree with Tony that harnessing the opportunity will require a coordinated effort on the part of both public and private sectors. We discussed targeted evidence-based investment in R&D as a key foundation for growth in our report. And you're right, Franki, even before COVID-19, overall investment in R&D innovation was declining in Australia. This was the case for both public and private sector investment in R&D, but the decline in private sector investment was more acute. Now with COVID-19 and the recession, it's very understandable that many businesses are struggling to get through this difficult economic environment, and investing in science and technology might not be top of mind. But at the same time, the Australian economy is at a pivotal juncture in its response to COVID-19, and the potential for an innovation-led recovery is huge. So that's why we've identified many deployment-ready technologies with huge recovery potential. So we think that by adopting these innovative market-ready technologies, businesses can deliver short-term investment returns to help drive their own recovery as well as that for the economy.
Thanks, Katherine. I'm just having a look at the questions coming through from our viewers, and a couple of them relate to research and development. One particular question is research, development and commercialisation of ideas will be important. Is our innovation system operating well? How might we improve our innovation system? Maybe like the Netherlands. I don't know whether you have whether you have any knowledge of what happens in the Netherlands, Katherine or Tony, but I'm wondering if you might comment on that question.
Sure. Franki, I can go first and then Tony can add. I can't comment on the Netherlands in particular, but as I said before, it's this, being able to harness the opportunities is going to require a really coordinated effort. I said public and private sector, but that means, the community sector, that means research sector as well. It's going to require a big coordinated effort. In our report, we note that harnessing the opportunities will require a number of key foundations for growth as well. We identified 5 key foundations for growth based on previous work and also consultations with business, research and community leaders. Firstly, existing industries can make more targeted and evidence-based science and technology investments and really accelerate their adoption of new technologies. We can also create technology-based export-facing industries that are globally competitive and secure and expand our international market access. Businesses can also invest more in the skills and capability of their workforce to enable workers to be more competitive and better prepared for future jobs. We also think a more inclusive and resilient culture in Australia can be pursued, including healthy risk-taking, which I think aligns with what Tony was talking about. And then lastly, decision-making processes in government, industry, community and the research sector can be broadened to recognise the importance of social and environmental considerations. So there's a lot we can do to capitalise on these opportunities in the innovation ecosystem.
Yeah, Franki, look, I agree. I think in terms of, it depends what we're talking about when we say the innovation system. I mean, for me, I automatically jump to the RDC, the Research and Development Centre, and that or structure, and that system is 30 years old or more now, and I think from an agriculture industry point of view, we do need to look at how we can improve that, how we can get more bang for our buck out of that, and how we can learn from the structures that are in place and be a little bit more flexible and innovative in going forward. From another perspective, I look at data and technology and innovation in digital agriculture, and there are significant gains in terms of farm gate value and contribution to industry and rural and regional economies from there. There's one or two reports around that have been done in the last couple of years that suggest the ag industry could benefit to the point of, to the value of about $20 billion if we were to uptake digital technology in agriculture. So not to mention the huge flow and benefits for environment and social aspects. So I think we're on the right trajectory to answer the question, is the innovation system right at the moment? I think there's some more work that we can do to make sure that we do take advantage of the system.
And I think on that environmentally sustainable point, Tony, we have another question from our viewers, which is, how is the ag sector going to future-proof itself by becoming environmentally sustainable?
Yeah, it's a good question. So what the short answer is by continuing to measure and monitor and manage and where possible, reduce impact or negative impact. We actually think this is a topic of discussion perhaps for another day, but we think there is a need and a significant opportunity to put in place a market-based mechanism that actually rewards and recognises the work that farmers do in managing the environment and the landscape. There is not enough, in our view, recognition of the opportunities and the work that farmers do if they manage 50% of Australia's landscape. A market-based system that actually rewards, recognises and remunerates good practice, we think is a huge opportunity, and we do think that it could add extra $5 billion to the value of Australia's farm gate. And we do think with the right settings and the right metrics that there will be significant commercial interest in that, and that it would operate as a market. So that's an area where we'd like to do some work. We're actually currently kicking off a project that is looking at that, and there's a range of commercial partners that are doing similar work. So that's the future, I think, in terms of addressing that issue.
I think that just as a follow-on from that issue, Katherine, and you might be able to comment on this, we've heard about a green recovery in the energy sector, but what about for agriculture? What innovative solutions are there to maximise both output and sustainability and to respond to climate change?
Yeah, thanks, Franki. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, the pandemic has heightened sustainability expectations, with businesses seeking ways to improve the efficiency and circularity of their production activities, while consumers are also seeking products that are ethically and sustainably sourced. And yes, some are calling for a green recovery, particularly in the energy sector, as we move towards decarbonisation and renewables. And many of the opportunities that we've identified directly respond to this trend towards sustainability. So in the food and agribusiness sector, the sustainable production chain opportunity and the alternative proteins opportunity are particularly relevant here. Enhancing the resilience and sustainable use and value of our environments, including by mitigating and adapting to impacts of climate change. It's a key challenge identified in our Australian National Outlook report that we did last year, and it's also a key focus of our missions program at CSIRO, where we're working on opportunities to help farmers overcome drought, navigate climate change uncertainty, and create a sustainable future protein industry. An example of an innovative solution to respond to climate change that I particularly love is the Future Feed supplement for feedstock that uses a special type of seaweed to increase production, but it also reduces methane emissions simultaneously. So I think that's pretty cool.
That's very cool. And of course, what's going to be important to all of this is ensuring that we have the skills and capability in Australia to realise these opportunities. One of the questions that has come through from our viewer audience is, what are the critical skills needed for the type of regionalisation proposed and high-value agri-food industry? Do we already have them in the regions, and how can we attract them if we don't have them?
That is a good question. I would say that it's a little bit of a chicken and egg. I think that they are there at the moment, but probably not in enough quantity or scale. However, if there is investment in some of these centres, then that breeds momentum that allows people to may be the tipping point for actually people to go to those regions. So once there is these, centres and regions that have got a vibrancy about them and technology and new business, then that will attract more people to go there, and it'll be a little ecosystem that'll grow organically. So I think they're there. Labour has always been a bit of an issue in the agriculture sense, but I see a bit of a shift as automation continues to play a part in the industry, that it won't be the traditional jobs, it'll be the much more value-adding jobs. There'll still, of course, be roles for people on farm, doing the traditional work, but there's a lot of opportunity to be had in agriculture that doesn't necessarily mean you're in the paddock all day.
And I guess that's part of what you were talking about earlier, Tony, which is part of the regionalisation agenda, is ensuring that there is that vibrancy in the regional markets in a range of industries, not just agriculture, in order to attract, the right people to the region.
Yeah, definitely. And we'd love to say that it's all about agriculture and we should continue to focus on just agriculture. But of course, we need a supply chain, we need the technology, we need the logistics, we need, the supply chain partners, all of the inputs and things like that. And that's where that whole regionalisation approach is. Agriculture's at the centre of it for us, but clearly the services and the technology and the health and education all goes with making a regional centre vibrant and attractive and really thriving.
Yeah, I have a question from Steve on Kangaroo Island, and his question is, how can a region get involved in R&D? So, are there any particular opportunities? Like, how do you attract R&D investment to a region? How do you go about doing that? I suppose perhaps is the question.
Is that a question for me, Franki, or Tony?
Either one of you.
It's not something I've thought about. So I'd be keen to hear what Tony has to say, but I agree with what Tony said earlier, that investment in food and agribusiness sector and investment in R&D will definitely support regional Australia. And the growth opportunities we've identified also support the creation of regional jobs. An example is the 50-odd new jobs in Wodonga that are being created as part of the new V2 Foods factory for alternative proteins. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, but very keen to hear what Tony has to say about, how you attract R&D investment in regional Australia in particular.
Yep. So I would say my intuitive response is via commodity, so the product, what sort of product or what sort of business or sector are you particularly in, but that obviously has an association, a correlation with the region too. So Kangaroo Island has particular attributes or characteristics, whether tourism or anything else, that would need to be woven into that R&D discussion. But in the first instance, I would say that it's probably going to be commodity driven to, whether it's identification of new markets or new processes or new products. That would be the initial sense, but it has to be part of a broader discussion, whether that's at the local government level or state level. So that would be my response to that question, commodity to start with.
And just while we're talking about that, Tony, I mean, the pandemic has highlighted our dependence on world commodity markets for many of our agricultural exports. What do you see this as meaning for the future of Australian agricultural exports?
Look, it's a tricky time at the moment. Agriculture is an export-orientated industry. We export arguably 75% of what's produced in this country. So export markets, market development, market growth, market access, absolutely fundamental to growth in the sector, and will drive and be a major contributor to the $40 billion we've got to find if we're going to achieve our target. So we have to continue to focus on those markets, address challenges as they come up, and they do, and they will in the future, but also look at growing markets where we haven't got a presence at the moment to continue to diversify. Agriculture has always been diversified, but it's an ongoing challenge. But export markets are an absolute critical factor in the growth of agriculture, but also regions, rural and regional communities.
Yeah. And this is a question I have, and one of our viewers also has, which is, given the recent hiccups, if you like, in the relationship between China and Australia, what does that mean for our export markets to China? What other international markets might there be for Australian produce?
Yeah, good question. As I say, it's a precarious situation at the moment, but China, in this case, has been a significant and incredibly valuable market for Australian farmers, and we'd love for that to continue. We hope that the challenges can be sorted out. It's at the geopolitical level, and those things happen from time to time. We appreciate that, but it's an incredibly valuable market. That being said, Australian food and fibre is highly regarded around the globe. I mean, that's one of the great things about our industry, is that it is just has such a good reputation and is so highly regarded. We are able to look at markets that require and want our product, and the products go all over the world. So we're in a good place, but I think we can do both. We can continue to focus on some of those major markets while also looking for opportunities. And I think that's just a normal business risk management type of approach. But we do hope that, China remains one of our most important markets.
Yeah. Are there other international markets we should be targeting? I mean, we don't just produce, the product, agricultural products. There's also ag tech. And how is, and I'm not sure, Katherine, maybe you can comment on this, just how Australia is placed in terms of the ag tech market. How competitive are we in that market?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Franki. Well, in terms of what international markets we should be targeting, I mean, exports to Asia Pacific are likely to be an important source of growth for Australian business in the food and agribusiness sector. Our food and agribusiness exports to China, India, Indonesia and Vietnam have grown considerably over the last 2 decades, and they're likely to continue to grow over the next decade as population and incomes in these countries grow. We've got free trade agreements such as with China and India, in Indonesia, that should support export demand, and trends towards stricter regulation on international food and safety and quality, which should also increase barriers to entry and protect the position of food producers and manufacturers in Australia, because we already have a good, strong track record for quality and safety. Now, target markets will also depend on the opportunity. So where some, major export markets exhibit significantly higher demand for some opportunities versus others. An example is the 30% of India's population, which are estimated to be vegetarian. So they'll have a significant demand for alternative proteins over the next decade. In terms of, competition more generally, of course, attractive growth prospects like the opportunities we're discussing today are very likely to attract significant competition. So it is possible that some of the domestic opportunities met by overseas imports and some of the export opportunities not realised if we're not able to compete strongly with competition overseas. But ultimately, the global market for food is very competitive, and we need to act now to harness these opportunities for growth.
Katherine, on that, I noticed in your growth opportunities report that the market for alternative proteins is expected to grow at around 5% a year, which is more than double the rate of 2.4% for the whole food and agri sector. I'd be interested to know, Tony, whether you're actually seeing any significant changes in the apologies, everyone, if you can hear some noise behind me. Tony, interested to know if you're actually seeing a change or a different shift in focus by our farmers and others who are actually trying to take advantage of that particular opportunity now.
Look, I think it's there. The question is to what extent. There's no doubt there's a growth in alternative protein markets and consumer demand, and that's been happening for some time. And I think it will be to the benefit of farmers. I mean, we think that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's not all about animal protein. It will always be a level of animal protein, but alternative proteins, could well be opportunities for farmers to continue to produce those goods. Obviously, fresh fruit and vegetable have been a mainstay, but soybeans, chickpeas, lentils, all of these products that may well be part of that alternative protein diet ultimately should be seen as an opportunity to grow the industry, not shrink it. So is there a shift? I would say so. It depends. The question is how much.
Yeah. Katherine, a question for you that has come in from one of our viewers, Christy Hammond. She has asked or mentioned that the sector needs to invest more in skills and capability of their people to build for the future. She's asked whether either of you see any particular skill gaps that need to be filled.
Yeah. So, yes, in our COVID report, we discussed skills and capability development as one of the key foundations for growth. We know that technologies that are reshaping existing industries and creating new ones are also changing the skills that will be needed in the workforce of tomorrow. So we definitely discuss investing more in skills and capabilities of Australia's workforce. And in terms of what types of skills, cognitive skills, which help people couple with technology, as well as strong creative, social and translational skills will be particularly important. These skills are difficult to place by technology, and they carry the co-benefit of promoting greater social opportunity and cohesion. So we think those sorts of skills are really important. Tony,
do you have any comments on that question?
I agree with Katherine. It's a range of skills. So it's at the semi-low skilled area right now. For to be really frank, harvest season, fruit picking, vegetable picking, harvesting has been an issue for a while. Going forward, it's obviously some of the digital tech capabilities that I think the industry would benefit from, and it's probably, to be honest, in between as well. So, it's an issue. Attracting people and keeping people in the industry are still a challenge.
Yeah. And I guess a related question is from another viewer: how will a contraction of university funding and hence R&D as a result of COVID-19 affect the recovery process? Wondering if either of you have any thoughts on that.
I don't. I mean, as a government agency, CSIRO doesn't really comment on those sorts of topics. Tony?
Look, I'd probably focus on, as I say, the R&D structure more so than the university. There's no doubt universities are taking an economic hit at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in terms of the reduction in research capacity. Too early to say, I would say at this point.
Tony, can I ask, just on your regionalisation agenda, you've sort of described that or explained that a paper is being prepared. What do you see as critical to happen in the next 6 months to really provide a great platform for the regionalisation agenda to roll out? What contribution by government at all levels is needed in the next 6 months to get that off the ground?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. One is the vision, and I think we're largely there. I think the regionalisation approach has been around. It's not a new concept. I think people understand the opportunities that are there. I think it's an appreciation and a recognition of the timeliness of a commitment from the Commonwealth and states and locals to actually to grab this right now. Now is the perfect time to grab it, and there's been barriers or objections to it in the past, but this pandemic should be seen as an opportunity to put those to the side and come together. So I think that's the hard part is giving and communicating governments the message and the steps to actually make this happen. I think they'd like to make it happen. It's the small steps, the framework that allows them to do that. And I think the other key part is clear commitments and advice from industry, from the private sector, that if you build it, they will come type of approach really is this can happen if all of the planets line up. So that's the advocacy approach that we'll be taking, is to provide clear private sector input and making sure we're clear with government around what sort of regulatory environment we need to make it happen.
Yeah. I'm conscious of the time, and we have time for one more question. And Hendrik Brenner has asked a question, and it goes like this: smart supply chain, digital-enabled agriculture only works when we have broad network and 5G available in regional Australia. Tony, is your paper going to make this part of the agenda?
Yes, ultimately, I hope it will. It's not. We're very conscious of that enabler, and there's issues that need to be addressed to make sure that we can take advantage of that. For example, the $20 billion value that will be created if we can get the uptake of digital technology. So it's central to our conversations in terms of what needs to happen, and also very much touches on that private partnership approach where companies can invest with a deal of certainty in the region. So definitely aware of it, and it is, as I say, central to our conversations with government.
Thank you. Well, I'm conscious of the time. We here at CEDA wanting to make sure that we're on time and get you all to your next meeting. So I'm going to wrap up today's conversation. I'd like to thank our speakers, Dr. Katherine Wynn, Lead Economist at CSIRO Futures, and Tony Mahar, Chief Executive Officer at the National Farmers Federation, for their very valuable insights. I think a couple of the things that I've taken away today are that there really are a wealth of opportunities that the sector offers. Private sector investments in science and technology will be key to realising those opportunities, and the commitment and collaboration at all levels of government will also be key. I'd like to thank once again our live stream sponsor, CSIRO. Your ongoing support allows CEDA to continue to lead the discussion on key policy issues. Finally, I'd like to thank you, our audience, for your time and participation in the discussion. And I personally have to apologise for a little bit of background noise that you can hear. I think my neighbour has decided to take to his hedge. Putting that aside, thank you again for your participation. You can post additional questions to Pigeonhole for the next 15 minutes, and CEDA will post selected responses in a post-event email. That email will also include a link to the recording of this live stream. Otherwise, the live stream will be made available on CEDA's website. Please feel free to continue the conversation by connecting with CEDA via LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook, and by visiting the website. Thank you again. Take care.